Hi, I'm Brandy. Welcome to Careers Unchecked. This is the podcast for high-achieving women who are doing well on paper, but something just doesn't feel right. Maybe you got the promotion and it feels heavier than you expected. Maybe your role keeps expanding, but your compensation just isn't. Maybe you're exhausted in a way that sleep just won't fix. Or maybe you had a quiet moment where you thought, is this actually what I want? I'm a career coach and a first-generation professional. I spent over a decade in corporate leadership, and at one point I applied to more than 250 jobs trying to figure out what work actually felt like mine. I've hired teams, built systems, burned out a few times, pivoted quietly, and rebuilt. What I've learned from my own story and from coaching hundreds of women is this: you don't need more noise. You need support, you need clarity, and you need a plan that actually fits your life. Around here, we reduce the mental load, we untangle burnout and imposter syndrome, and we build strategy that feels aligned, not performative. And we move forward in a way that's both grounded and strategic. You'll leave with practical tools, real frameworks, and perspective you can use right away, so you can stop overthinking and start making moves that feel authentic. This is Careers Unchecked. Let's get into it. Today, I want to talk about something that showed up really clearly for me recently: mental load. Not the kind that shows up on your to-do list, the kind that is humming quietly in the background of everything that you do. And if you've ever looked at your calendar and thought, why am I this tired? Or if work suddenly feels heavier than it used to, even though nothing obvious has changed, this episode is for you. Especially if you're someone who's used to being the reliable one, the one people count on, the one who keeps things moving. Because what I want to talk about today isn't productivity hacks. It's not time management. It's the invisible weight so many high-performing people carry. The kind that doesn't fit neatly into a calendar block, but quietly drains your energy anyway. I had a moment recently that made this really click for me. My husband and I were coordinating some family plans, and at one point, he asked me very genuinely, okay, what can I do to help to get everything together? And I said this without even thinking. It's been done for weeks. There wasn't an edge to my voice. It wasn't frustration. It was just truth. But the second I said it out loud, something clicked and I stopped. I realized I had been carrying this whole extra layer of responsibility for weeks. Planning ahead, thinking through logistics for our family, our other families in our family, weaving it around work and home life, holding all these small details together to make sure everything ran smoothly, tracking timelines, remembering the conversations that we'd had, connecting dots. And by the time help showed up, the work was already done. And that's when I really saw it. Mental load isn't just the doing of the thing. It's thinking about the thing long before anyone else ever sees it. It's anticipating, remembering, adjusting, holding context. And if you're someone who's always been capable and dependable, you probably do this constantly. Hello, oldest child here. Without even realizing that you're doing it. That's the thing. Once I saw it, I started noticing it everywhere. And research backs this up. A study published in the American Sociological Review found that women spend significantly more time on cognitive labor in the household, even when physical tasks are shared equally. We're talking about the planning, the remembering, the coordinating, the invisible stuff that nobody notices until it doesn't get done. And here's the thing. Mental load doesn't turn off when work does. It follows you into the evenings, weekends, quiet moments, even seasons that are supposed to feel slow and relaxing. So when you're exhausted, but you can't really point to a clear reason, it's likely not because something's wrong with you. It's because you never actually stopped holding everything together all at once. And I see this work constantly with my clients and with a lot of women especially. But more specifically, I see it with the people who are the glue on their teams, the glue on their partnerships, the steady ones, the thoughtful ones, the ones who notice things before anybody else does, the people who anticipate needs before they ever even show up and are named out loud. They're the ones who catch the gaps before they become problems, who carry context no one formally assigned them, but everyone depends on. These are often the same people who were raised to be responsible early on in life, who figured things out without a roadmap, who built their careers through hard work and awareness, whose strengths became the reason people rely on them. But they also create a lot of invisible responsibility. And here's where it gets really tricky. Most workplaces reward output. They don't reward cognitive load. So the exhaustion people feel doesn't always line up with what their calendars show or the compensation they're being given. On paper, everything looks fine. The work's getting done, expectations are being met. Sometimes they're even exceeded, but internally, something feels heavier than it should. This is where confusion starts for most people. People compare themselves to earlier version of themselves and they wonder, gosh, why am I so tired? Why does this feel harder than it used to? Why can't I just get it all together? And it's because there isn't an obvious problem to point to. It's just that question is starting to be turned inward. And what's going unnamed are the moments that they have continued to carry this for a really long time. And often their life becomes more fuller, more complex than it ever used to be, because that's what happens with life. So even if your job title hasn't changed, you might be carrying more. You're managing more context or responsible for more moving parts or just history. And so of course it's going to feel heavier. And then if your family dynamics change, let's just add that in too. I want to be really clear about something. When work feels harder than it should, it's very rarely your motivation that needs to be kicked in the pants. And it's almost always never about laziness or being ungrateful or that you're doing anything wrong. You just are involved with a system that quietly depends on your overfunctioning, your cognitive overfunctioning. Expectations will be assumed instead of clarified, and roles will be expanded rather than being redefined every time there's a change. And life requires more of you than it probably did a few years ago. There isn't a productivity hack that will fix it. And the Harvard Business Review calls part of this non-promotable work the behind-the-scenes work that keeps teams running. And who often does that in the workplace? Women. And it often doesn't lead to advancement. So women who are already seen as capable are often asked to take on more of this work. So when you're exhausted, sometimes it's because the system is leaning on you in ways it doesn't even realize. This is where I see people burn a lot of energy trying to solve the wrong problem. They're trying to optimize themselves instead of examining what's actually going on and what the system is that they're operating inside. But the real shift, the one that's actually going to change things for you if you're listening to this, is not about doing less. It's literally about clarity. When someone finally names what they're carrying, something softens. There's relief, and then there's empowerment. And suddenly they're going to have solid ground to stand on. They're going to look at their situation differently and for what it actually is instead of what they think they should be doing. They're going to start taking control in the areas that they need to take control and they can take control. And often we'll start to give ourselves a little bit of grace when we can't. Once that clarity clicks for myself and for my clients, I start to see the same thing happening again and again. People stop apologizing for being tired. They start setting boundaries without guilt. And they start asking for more clarity instead of silently absorbing all the extra bits and pieces. They're going to make career decisions from intention instead of urgency. Their energy doesn't magically increase, or at least mine doesn't, but they often will stop wasting their time on self-criticism, and that little piece right there often creates more mental space. Okay, so if you're listening to this and you're going, yes, Brandy, this is me, sign me up. I want to get practical with you. Here are 3 small steps you can try this week to try to help with this problem. Number 1, I want you to do a mental load audit. So grab a notebook or open up a note on your phone. A voice memo works well as well. For the next few days, track what's taking up mental space. Not the to-do list tasks, but the thinking behind the tasks. The remembering, the coordinating, the writing it down as it comes up so I don't forget. You might be surprised how much you're just holding on to without even realizing there's an actionable checkbox there. Then number 2, I want you to name one thing, just one, that you're carrying that isn't actually yours to carry. Look at your audit. Is there something there that became your responsibility by default? Something you picked up because nobody else was picking it up? You don't have to fix it this week. I just want you to notice it. I want you to be aware of it. And then number 3, I want you to ask for one piece of clarity from something on that list. Pick an area where expectations feel fuzzy, where you're not quite sure what success looks like and who's responsible for what. And then I want you to ask. Send the email, send a text, start the conversation. Can we clarify what's expected here? That's a very reasonable question. And clarity immediately reduces mental load. Every single time. More than anything, what I want you to know today, you're not broken. If work feels harder than it used to, you're probably not doing it wrong. You're just probably carrying more than you realize inside systems that quietly depend on your overfunctioning. And the first step towards change isn't doing more, it's adding clarity. This is exactly where my work lives. I help people design careers that fit their lives, not the lives they had 5 years ago, not the ones they think they're supposed to want, the lives they are living right now. And if you're realizing that what you need right now isn't another productivity hack or another system to log your to-do list, clearer thinking is what you're going to need, and steady support. I would love to walk with you on that journey. You can learn more about working together at talentcareercoaching.com. And if this episode resonated, I'd love to hear from you. You can send me a DM on Instagram at Talent Career Coaching, or send me an email at hello@talentcareercoaching.com. You are not alone in what you're carrying, and you do not have to have it all figured out by yourself. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time. Thanks for being here on this episode of Careers Unchecked. If something from today is sitting with you, and a good next step feels like taking our burnout quiz, I want you to head over to talentcareercoaching.com. This quiz is free, it's short, and it's designed to help you figure out what you're feeling is burnout, or maybe it's misalignment and something about your work is no longer a fit. Those aren't always the same thing, and it really does matter which one it is so that you can go deeper and figure out what is actually happening. Just so you know, everything else lives there too. Blog posts, past episodes, free resources, and then obviously how to book a call or work with me if that makes sense for you too. All of it is there. In the meantime, I'll see you next week.